All right, welcome back to Savold Fantasy Talk. I'm Chris Savold alongside John Schooner, and it's the first episode of 2016. And we had a nice intro of Fife Dog, a tribute to him. So, John, let's get right into it. What are the biggest signings of free agency? For me, I think Danny Trevathan going to the Bears, obviously it's going to hurt the Broncos' defense a lot. He's really anchored that defense as a middle linebacker. But the Bears have been kind of missing a good middle linebacker for their defense since Brian Urlacher retired. I think Trevathan is a young guy, and he'll bring that sense of, for the defensive line, don't have to make every tackle. Trevathan can just a hard-nosed, good middle linebacker.
He was really good for the Broncos, and I think he can kind of take what he learned from some more veteran linebackers on the Broncos with Demarcus Ware and Von Miller, and he can take that and really help that Bears defense going forward.
Also, for me, the Oakland Raiders are becoming one of the most talented teams in the NFL. We saw, obviously, Amari Cooper and Derek Carr are going to be one of the best 1-2 punches in the next 10 years.
Michael Crabtree also
and then Michael Crabtree as well. But then this year they signed Bruce Irving, Austin Melee of the Rams will really help anchor their very talented offensive line, and then Sean Smith coming from their own division with the Chiefs. I think that defense, especially with Khalil Mack as well, is going to be one of the better defenses in the NFL, and I think they have the talent. I don't know if they have the depth and kind of the veteran presence, but I think they can make a playoff run this year. And
they can.
Maybe deep.
Their defense their division has gotten much weaker, and the Raiders are looking really good. They have a lot of people who are kind of coming into their own. Khalil Mack has matured a lot, and he's still really young, so he's going to be great anchoring that team, and then the offense is obviously coming into itself as well.
I think also we have to talk about the Giants in the NFC East. They spent the most out of any other team, bringing Janoris Jenkins, Damon Harrison, Oliver Vernon, re-signing Jason Pierre-Paul. A lot of high-risk signings. Janoris Jenkins, there's no question whether he has the talent, but he was beat too much, missed too many tackles for the Rams, and they felt that it would be better for them to really keep their few most talented veterans and let Janoris Jenkins go and maybe keep that money to be able to re-sign Tavon Austin in the upcoming years, maybe go after a quarterback next year in free agency. I think the Giants...
It's an upside signing, though. Janoris Jenkins
definitely
is very talented. He's fast. He has a lot of raw talent, but obviously he missed a lot of tackles last year, and you never know what's going to happen with him. But I think it has the potential of being a really good signing in the years to come for the Giants.
And Jason Pierre-Paul kind of went under the radar. Obviously, news-wise, he didn't, but production-wise, he pressured the quarterback very well. He wasn't able to bring down the quarterback as much, but because of his club, he didn't have the grip strength as he had in previous years, but he still was getting pressure to the ball, which is
something that
the most important
really
quality.
Needs.
And that you can do consistently, but sacks aren't always there. Your pressures are always going to be there statistically. A guy who always is getting a good defensive end or a good linebacker will always be getting quarterback pressures and won't have it down year in quarterback pressures, but he might have it down year in sacks. And I think that's less pertinent. I think that if the pressures are there, that's what matters.
Jason Pierre-Paul, he's always going to bring pressure to the quarterback, as you said, and I think that's something very valuable to the Giants, especially with their horrible pass rush last year. You need to keep that there for that team.
Yeah, for the Giants, they have a lot of holes on that team. I think they did a good job of filling it up through free agency, and I think they're in a kind of win-and-now mindset because Eli Manning, he's getting older now, and you only have so many good years of him left, and I still think he's a pretty overrated quarterback. I think he ranks, since 2011, he's 28th in the league for pass rating, which is kind of hard to believe, and he also leads the league in interceptions, and right now he's 35, so 3 years left maybe, and you have Odell Beckham together in their prime for 3 more years. You really need to win now. I wouldn't be surprised. Laquan Treadwell maybe as a pairing with Odell Beckham because they kind of lack a wide receiver too.
Because Victor Cruz is never coming back. I hate to say it. Victor Cruz, he was so good, and then I just feel bad to say it, but I don't think he's ever going to be able to make a comeback.
And then also losing Ruben Randall in the offseason is going to be rough. But then Reggie Ragland, kind of quickly talking about the draft, linebacker out of Alabama, hard-nosed, run-stopping, plug up the middle linebacker could fix the holes at middle linebacker for the Giants. So that's a little preview of the draft, which we'll be getting to later in the podcast. Also, the Jets. That's kind of... They lost a little bit of... They're one of the oldest teams now after signing Forte and losing Ivory. When you look at possible quarterback, if Fitzpatrick resigns, which is kind of
Revis.
And then Revis as well, and then also Brandon Marshall. So those are trio-wise. If Fitzpatrick came back, Forte, there's a lot of talent there, but how long is that able to be sustained? And as a general manager, do you want to bring back Fitzpatrick when you've seen the best of him? You've seen,
and it's hard to have a win now mindset when you're in the division with the Patriots.
Yeah, that's also true.
So, I mean, you want to say, okay, the Jets re-signed Fitzpatrick and they have this win now mindset, but the problem is, how can you have a win now mindset when it's going to be so hard to win now? So it might be better for the Jets to think to the future, but I don't think that they're doing that based on their signing of Forte.
Yeah, and then so maybe a possibility of seeing Geno Smith return for a little bit of playing time if Fitzpatrick does not re-sign, which would be very interesting because we all know what happened last year after getting sucker punched in the locker room and losing a starting job, possibly losing the chance to have a successful career. Also, Houston Texans, they made a lot of big signings, and there's obviously a lot of talent there with Lamar Miller, who in my opinion is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. That
division is going to be more interesting now. That team just got really good.
He never was really used for Miami. I think he got over 25 carries once or twice. And even though he always put up consistent numbers, I think given his talent paired with Osweiler, who only played 7 games this year, with one of the best defenses in the NFL and one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL, will he be able to bring that to Houston? He got a huge contract. How much? Over $70 million, I think.
Yeah, I think he did.
And that's a big gamble by Houston, but clearly they know how rare quarterback talent is to come by, and they bit on the bait for Osweiler, and we'll see if it will pay off.
He's a big body. He's very physically gifted, and he proved with the Browns that he could manage the game. Obviously, that game against the Patriots last year really proved something about Brock Osweiler's ability to kind of play to his team's strengths. The Houston defense is really good, and now given Lamar Miller, I think Brock Osweiler has a good offense to work with, and I think he can be fairly successful.
And then also, that obviously pairing with DeAndre Hopkins will be very possibly good pairing, but Lamar Miller has never ran for over 1,000 yards once, while he's averaged 4.9 yards per carry, 5.1 yards per carry, 4.5, and 4 yards per carry. So there's no question whether he has the talent, and he's durable too. He's played consecutively, started 48 straight games, and it'll be interesting to see, especially with the fantasy impact, if he's able to get that workload that he never sustained in.
One thing about Lamar Miller, and this is kind of goes back to the Texans, is the Texans, when they had Arian Foster, fed him the ball. So they always gave the ball to their workhorse running back. But when they didn't have a workhorse running back, they always split the carries. You never knew who was going to be consistent, at least on a fantasy basis.
Yeah, Alfred Blue or whatever.
Or Jonathan Grimes or whoever. But now that they have Lamar Miller, Arian Foster's gone. I think Lamar Miller has a legitimate chance to get the workload that Arian Foster had, and he could be a really interesting fantasy pick this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in that Texans offense, Lamar Miller also is the opportunity to be a receiver out of the backfield, which we saw a little bit in Miami, but not very much. And I think Brock Osweiler, as a young quarterback, will be checking down to whatever, if it's a tight end running a drag route or a route into the flats, or Lamar Miller running a wheel or a screen pass or something, he'll be checking down on Lamar Miller, and that'll just maybe not be a lot of designed pass plays with a running back being the number one target, or the first option for him. There'll be a lot of volume for him.
Yeah.
And then also Chargers. It'll be kind of interesting because Travis Benjamin signed there, leaving Cleveland, and him paired with Keenan Allen, who suffered a season-ending injury last year.
But he was having a great season.
Season. That shows me that the Chargers don't look at Keenan Allen like a long-term number one wide receiver. And I kind of look at Travis Benjamin and Keenan Allen as two guys
has something to prove. Yeah.
Talent-wise, kind of the same level, and we'll see who gets the majority of the volume. Kind of like the Redskins when Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon came, both two talented guys, two former number one wide receivers, but neither of them gets that huge workload as a number one wide receiver, just bringing the targets consistently.
The thing, though, is last year we saw with the Chargers when Keenan Allen got the workload, especially when Antonio Gates was
insane.
out, he was ridiculous. And Travis Benjamin has big play ability, but he doesn't have that consistent ability. He doesn't have that consistent play that Keenan Allen really has, and that's why I think Keenan Allen should be getting more respect from the Chargers organization, but he just hasn't through the course of his career, despite how talented we've seen him to be.
And I think that kind of reminds me of back to the Redskins. Pierre Garçon before Deshaun Jackson signed, he led the league in receptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Keenan Allen before he got 80, 90 maybe 90 targets in the 8-game half a season. So it's 160 targets, 130 receptions. That is high level for a wide receiver. And then with Keenan, as you said before, Travis Benjamin, big playability but isn't consistently there. Deshaun Jackson. So I think that you might want to shy away from that as a fantasy owner. Because you never want that big playability guy that can't do it consistently.
We know Phillip Rivers is going to throw Antonio Gates in the red zone anyway.
Yeah,
this is never a receiving core you want to be too interested in, considering Antonio Gates is always going to get the touchdowns.
And then kind of touching on the Cowboys, who just a few days ago signed Alfred Morris, taking him away from Washington, who selected him in the 6th round in 2012, and then ran for 1,600 yards and something that was kind of passed over. He was really slept on as the Rookie of the Year that year. I think he had, if you look at the past running backs as rookies, he had the best rookie running back season. And I think he kind of deserved that as a rookie. I think definitely over Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson, maybe not RG3, because we know how statistically good RG3 was as a rookie.
Alfred Morris also is going to have a nice time running behind that line. So I actually look for Alfred Morris to be an interesting option. Especially, I mean, a down year will have people kind of frustrated with him, but he could be really interesting because I think he's going to get some workload in Dallas.
Yeah, and Jerry Jones recently said that Darren McFadden still is a starting running back for the Cowboys, but I mean, if you look at the Cowboys last year, they were praising Joseph Randle.
They were set with Joseph Randle.
Joseph Randle. And then he went down, got injured, then just got cut for his multiple arrest record, and then we had McFadden come in, get injured, and then you had, what's his name, Seattle running back? Christian Michael come in, and that was just a fiasco for fantasy owners. And then still available, we have Arian Foster, who's a veteran, still has the talent, but can't get it done consistently due to basically every year getting injured.
He could be an interesting signing for some team though, because when Arian Foster plays, he's always solid.
Yeah,
but
I could see him going.
He just has problems getting on the field.
I could see him going to the Patriots, New England, get a ring with Tom Brady, and then also
he deserves it. He's been a warrior.
Veterans like to play behind Bill Belichick and with Bill Belichick. Rookies not so much because he's a tough coach. He's going to demand the best from you, but Foster knows he has that in him. And then also Nick Farley, the defensive end out of St. Louis, very talented. He's going to be paid well, but his contract price probably went down since he hasn't signed very recently. So we'll see where he ends up. And then also Reggie Nelson, aging safety for the Bengals. He can help someone. In a win now. Someone goes down maybe if he doesn't sign. He's talented, but it's how long can he sustain that? Will he even be able to sustain it going to next year? And my personal favorite as a Redskins fan is Walter Thurmond, who plays for Philadelphia Eagles or played for the Philadelphia Eagles. Struggled early in his career, but had his best year last year, but it still wasn't. The interception numbers weren't there. But Pro Football Focus rated him well, and I think we could get him at a discount price for the Redskins and bring in a consistent safety who isn't too old yet. I think Walter Thurmond, late 20s, so that's kind of prime of his career. He's 28, so I think that's a possible signing for the Redskins. So then, fantasy impact, we covered that. Redskins offseason, I'll quickly touch on this. I know, John, you're not very passionate about it. But we saw Terrence Knighton, Darrell Young, Alfred Morris, Deshaun Golson, Jason Hatchard, all gone.
Junior Gillette is important that they re-sign him.
But really all those guys, their talent might not have been there. Terrence Knighton struggled. He was playing a little bit too heavy. Wasn't able to move as well as he did for the Broncos, and wasn't able to shut down the run like he did with the Broncos.
He was fantastic.
And then Alfred Morris, obviously, career lows in touchdowns, yards per carry.
Carries.
Goldson, carries as well. Just was too slow, too old. And then Jason Hatcher, career lows as well. All these guys were aging, but they brought a veteran presence to the locker room. So now you're looking up to these news guys. Ryan Kerrigan, still kind of a young guy. Will he be able to step up as a team leader? Chris Baker, Kirk Cousins, Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson. Will he be able to show that maturity? I know all of them have the potential to, maybe aside from Jackson, but will he be able to step up and lead this team to the first consecutive playoff run since 1990s?
I think we can learn a lot about Kirk Cousins in the first couple games this season and see if he can really lead the team, because
how can he deal with adversity?
We saw RG3 led the team well his rookie season, and Kirk Cousins in his first full year as starter led the team well this year, but I think the second year is very important.
Yeah.
So if Kirk Cousins can really prove that he can be a leader on this team, he can be a starter on the team for a very long time.
And it's what Kirk Cousins is going to show up is going to be the Kirk Cousins of the last 8 games where he threw 2 interceptions and 20 touchdowns, between the Kirk Cousins of 2012, 2013, 2014.
Sporadic.
Where sporadic, the talent's there, but he's just making these stupid mistakes. And I think he's crossed that path. I think he's crossed the threshold.
I mean, in the last couple of games last season, we just saw a more calm, collected Kirk Cousins. He was more confident in his arm. He didn't
confident in the pocket.
He wasn't always pushing throws, because I think when he was throwing all those interceptions, it looked like he was forcing his throws down the field. He was trying to make a big play, whereas later in the season he realized he was confident in what he was doing, and he was able to make really good throws during that time.
And then also, talking about Junior Gillette, as John touched on, very good signing. We saw him get cut last year due to an off-field incident, which he was never charged or suspended for. And we saw we re-signed to the veteran minimum, no guaranteed money. And he was playing very well, very intense and talented as a leader and as a player in training camp. And then a week before the first preseason game, he tears his Achilles, done for the year. I think this year it's kind of the same deal, heavily loaded with incentives. Will he be able to bounce back to the double-digit sacks that we saw in the Saints? Because he is one of the league's best pass rushers.
He is.
But is that still there 2 years later? Also, as a Redskins fan, not related to free agency, but the Redskins have brought together a pretty talented offensive line. Pro Football Focus ranked them 11th last year. And if you look, Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in the league, perennial Pro Bowler. Then Morgan Moses really stepped up last year. He got great grades by Pro Football Focus, was tackle of the week by them for 1 week. Was really good in the run game. And then also Brandon Sheriff, obviously 5th overall pick last year. He struggled a little bit out of the gate, but he really brought up his level of play in the coming weeks.
This is only going to be his second season, so he still has some room to grow, and I think he has plenty of time to do so. He has a solid role on the team, and I think he'll be a lot better this season.
And then also we brought in Kendall Reyes, defensive end out of San Diego. Really never has been that great. I guess he'll be good, bring a veteran presence to the locker room. Like we said, they kind of might lack that. But also David Burton from the Broncos, who was backup for the Broncos, but 2012 Pro Bowler, I believe, 2013 maybe. And then his talent, it's kind of, are you bringing this guy and is he just going to be that 1 year, get you year from year? It was Ryan Clark and then Deshaun Goldston, and will this be the next guy? So then RG3, obviously, we haven't talked about him. He just signed with the Browns. Is that a good move, John? And I will counter your argument.
I think it's probably better for him because he's going to have at least an opportunity to play. But I don't know if it's a good move for the Browns because they're just asking for what they've seen over the last 20 seasons. They've just been asking for unstable quarterbacks and difficult situations. But the thing is, they're not paying him that much, but they don't have too much to lose right now. But The problem is something that we saw a lot with the Redskins he's a big problem in the locker room. He was never able to become the leader that they always expected him to be, and although he appeared to be this fantastic leader, we never really saw it pan out. And I don't know if he's gonna be. He might just be the next Johnny Manziel in Cleveland.
Yeah. So I'm first gonna counter your thing about him being kind of bad in the locker room. Now, I think obviously he wasn't great, but I think he's also been kind of underrated and unfairly blamed. In 2012, the team started the season 3-6, and this is a lost season, right? Mike Shanahan says, "All right, you guys, vote for one more team captain." They vote for the rookie quarterback RG3. The team goes 7-0 since then. The record isn't really that pertinent to that history, but the fact that the team had the confidence to vote him as a captain as a rookie. And then also, recently Chris Cooley, for the drive of ESPN 980, our rival station, he called out RG3 and said some things about him that weren't exactly positive and a little bit vulgar maybe. And multiple Redskins that don't even play with RG3 before, Brian Orakpo, Niles Paul, D'Angelo Hall, etc., all backed up RG3, went out of their way to back up RG3, and Brian Orakpo physically threatened Chris Cooley, going pretty far. And so I think RG3, he was a little bit of a problem in the locker room, but I don't think he's as bad as a guy like Johnny Manziel. I think he's a good guy. He might be a little bit overconfident, but I think Jay Gruden, he made him the third-string quarterback, dressed for one game last year. I think that humbled him. And even though it seemed like a kind of jerk move by Jay Gruden, it humbled RG3. I think he hit rock bottom last year. And I think he'll be able to rise up from there, possibly for the Browns, start a few games, Carson Wentz will come in, or whoever they draft at number 2, and maybe be able to leave the next year or in 2 years and sign a bigger contract.
Just like I was saying about Kirk Cousins, there's a lot we can learn about RG3 in the first couple games this season.
Yeah,
he needs to prove that he's still a legitimate NFL player, and he needs to prove something soon, or else he's just gonna end up like Tim Tebow, one great season and done.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does have he's more talented than people say, like Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel.
Yes.
Kind of, obviously you weren't comparing them straight up, but unfair comparisons. I think he definitely has the ability to become.
Yes, he does.
A good average quarterback, possibly a good quarterback in the NFL. And I think in his 2015 season, 2014 season, the last few games he had, they weren't horrible. He put up decent numbers. Touchdown numbers weren't there, but he still performed and showed he could play in the pocket. And he ended up obviously getting hurt in preseason. Then it was Kirk Cousins' team from there. And as a Redskins fan, thank God for that, because Kirk Cousins I'd rather have than RG3, just consistent. Not even thought of it in any way as an issue in the locker room. But then RG3 on the field. Hugh Jackson, coaching the Browns now, new coach. New Jay Gruden from the Bengals. I don't know how that influenced the signing. And I don't think they're going to run the offense with the Bengals, because we saw that with Jay Gruden and not really work out well by any means. But I think what he did with the Raiders in 2011 with Jason Campbell, and he kind of heavily run the ball and then just toss it downfield, I think that'll give a chance for RG3. And Hugh Jackson has said in the past, if a quarterback's willing to work hard, which Griffin I think will, he's always working, he just kind of gets caught up in it sometimes. Mm-hmm. He'll put confidence and back that quarterback. So I think RG3, from first sight, with Browns not much talent, I think he does have a possibility.
He has an opportunity. He will have an opportunity, but I mean, obviously we said about Carson Wentz, we both like him, but I mean, RG3 is going to have to prove something if the Browns are really going to take a quarterback.
And for the Browns, the talent obviously isn't there. They just let 2 offensive linemen, Alex Mack as one of them, go to Atlanta. Then Josh Gordon, we don't know if he's coming back. Gary Barnidge, look, fantasy owners might love him. He's not a great tight end. I don't think he'll be able to sustain his numbers from last year.
And then Travis Benjamin's gone.
And also Travis Benjamin. There's just too many negatives team-wise.
In an urgent time in RG3's career, it's going to be a tough situation. And that's what I hate to say for those who are hoping RG3 is going to kind of turn it around. but it's just going to be so difficult because he has no one to throw to.
Yeah, and kind of how we talked about Carson Wentz, kind of segueing into the draft. I'll get my first opinions on it, John. You can counter it if you feel like it. First off, I think Jalen Ramsey's the most talented player in the draft. I think it's kind of tough because you see the Titans picking first overall. Laramie Tunsil is, I think, going to be drafted, would be the best choice for the Titans to draft him because, look, Marcus Mariota missed 3 games and ended the season on IR last year. You have to protect your franchise quarterback by any means.
It's one of the most important things in football at this point is every team who has success has a franchise quarterback that they can rely on week in and week out. And the best teams are able to protect their quarterback, and that is so important for the Titans right now. They found the quarterback they've been looking for so long. We saw hints of Marcus Mariota being really, really impressive last year. They need to protect him. They need him to stay and keep him on the field for 16 games this season.
And then also talking about that, Laramie Tunsil, I think if he doesn't get drafted by the Titans, you could see him fall all the way to 5 possibly, or maybe 6.
And because at 5, you see the Jaguars is another team who wants to protect their new quarterback. I think that is another important thing that a team like the Jaguars, if the Titans don't get them, I think that it's important that Tunsil goes to a team that has a young quarterback who needs to be protected.
Yeah, and then so you see Titans obviously, if they pick Jalen Ramsey, who I think is the only other player that they might select first overall. Then the Browns, I think, will address quarterback no matter what, and then whether it's Carson Wentz, as I believe, or Jared Goff. And then
should be Carson Wentz.
The Chargers just re-signed their tackle to a new contract, so that kind of shows that they aren't heavily investing in offensive line.
A team like the Cowboys doesn't need offensive line.
Yeah, obviously. So you could see a drop by Laramie Tunsil, a few picks. And then Carson Wentz versus Jared Goff. I like Carson Wentz, and I know you do too. And I think that's because he played in a pro-style offense. Even though it was FCS, he played in a pro-style offense, so he will be able to adjust to the NFL pretty well. The talent level obviously is going to be much higher in the NFL that he's facing, but he's not doing spread offense or just all read option screen passes.
And then if you just look at him, he's huge, he's strong, he's a perfect NFL quarterback body if you just look at him, and that's just something that you don't see anywhere else in the draft. And Carson Wentz, I think, is a perfect guy that you can try to build your team around because he's going to be flexible. He's played in a pro-style offense. I think it's a really interesting pick. And if not the Browns, anyone else in the draft, I think Carson Wentz is a very interesting pick.
I do like him more than any quarterback 2 years ago in the 2013 draft. I like him more than Bortles and Derek Carr, even though Derek Carr I do really like. Carson Wentz also, he, as John touched on, my favorite type of quarterback's that tall, not skinny, but like big-bodied, like 230, 6'4", and then and then also has the ability to run outside the pocket. And if you look at Carson Wentz's tape, if the throw isn't there, he's able to roll out. He's good pocket presence as well. He's able to roll out, run for 15 yards. He had a 4.77 40-yard dash, which is obviously very good for a quarterback, especially of his size and height. So, and he can take the hits.
And also, he doesn't take dumb hits, like we were saying about RG3.
Yeah.
Watching his tape, you see he's going to fight for the extra yard because he knows that he's big enough and strong enough to handle the defensive players. But when he doesn't have an extra yard there, he's not going to try to push for it.
And then also segueing into Ezekiel Elliott. Very, very talented. One of the best all-around backs.
It's just hard to find him a place in the draft.
Yeah, but where's he going to fall? Are the Cowboys going to take him at 4? I don't think so. But
I don't think so either.
I think he could fall to 8 maybe to the Eagles because they just traded up with the Dolphins from 13 to 8.
I could see him at 8.
10 for the Giants.
Yeah, I think if not Laquan Treadwell at 10, I think it'd be really interesting for the Giants to try to get Zeke because they've really struggled to have a run game basically
with Rashad Jennings
for a really long time. There's, the Bears maybe, but Jeremy Langford has kind of been interesting for them last year. There's no surefire place for Ezekiel Elliott like we were thinking with Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to see where he falls.
Teams nowadays are not investing as heavily as they used to in running backs. And You don't see Emmitt Smith anymore. You don't see guys like Adrian Peterson even anymore. Because teams just want a running back by committee, which, as hard as it is for fantasy owners, it does work pretty well. Because defenses have to adjust to multiple running backs, different third down backs, possibly take linebackers originally would be pass rushing and put him in a flat zone or just man-to-man with the running back to keep him from being a threat on third down. Also, I think two positions kind of have a lot of guys at the same talent, but not like top 10. Wide receiver and defensive tackle, or defensive line. Because we see wide receiver, you have Corey Coleman, Laquan Treadwell, Michael Thomas, Jock Dawson, all getting these like mid to late round wide receiver grades. And then also you have defensive line. It's just a plethora of defensive linemen. Then you have Kevin Dodd, you have Sheldon Rankins, you have Jerron Reed, you have Ashawn Robinson, both out of or Jaron Reed, I'm sorry, out of Alabama. And then you also have guys like outside linebacker or a defensive lineman in a 4-3, like Leonard Floyd, Nadik Nietzsche, who has off the field issues but still has that talent there. I think all those guys, this draft isn't especially talented in any aspect. I think after you get back to past the first like 12 picks, all of these guys, it wouldn't be that surprising to see them taken in like the second round, early second round, or falling to the second round.
It's going to be very interesting to see what the different teams do in the draft because there's so many different ways you can go about it. Because there's obviously guys like Laquan Treadwell, Ezekiel Elliott, all like who you really just don't know where they're going to go. Teams could go very high in the draft. Ezekiel Elliott could go in the top 5. Laquan Treadwell could go in the top 10. But you just never know. It's going to be a really interesting draft, and there's a lot of different ways it could go, unlike previous years.
And then also kind of talking about Coleman versus Thomas versus Doxson versus Treadwell. All of these guys, aside from Coleman, are like a poor man's Dez Bryant or a poor man's Alshon Jeffrey, where they're all 6'2", or 6'3", 6'2", 6'4", I think Doxson is. And these guys, they're explosive, but they don't have that ability to come down with the ball. They don't have the ball skills of someone like a red zone threat, like Dorial Green-Beckham was last year, or Devontae Parker was last year. They're all kind of in between.
That's why that's why they're a poor man's Dez Bryant, not Dez Bryant.
I think Laquan Treadwell kind of is the best mix of all of those together, of all of the qualities together, but he doesn't jump out in one area. He's not extremely fast. He's not extremely explosive. He doesn't best route running ability. Corey Coleman has recently risen on a lot of draft boards. He's extremely fast. Just ranked in the top of wide receivers are bench press, vertical jump, and broad jump, and ran a 4.37, which is incredible. And he's kind of a small guy, Deshaun Jackson, like burner type, deep threat in the NFL. So it will be interesting to see with teams like with wide receiver needs. Like, I mean, you could look at the Colts, you could look at the Bills. I mean, Lions after losing Calvin Johnson. There's so many teams that need a wide receiver.
Another guy. There's just so many different places that these certain guys could go. This draft could go so many different ways. That's why it's so hard to analyze.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams could take them. Obviously, Tavon Austin's never really completely panned out for them. I doubt the Rams would take someone like Coleman, just because they lack height.
Yeah.
And I think if they had a red zone threat where they don't have to run Todd Gurley 3 times in a row on the 5-yard line, trying to get those last 5 yards, they could toss it up to Laquan Treadwell on a fade with whoever's going to be playing quarterback for them, whether it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, whether it's Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Christian Hackenberg. I mean, also talking about these later round quarterbacks, I think with Hackenberg especially, they're trying too hard to find it. Yeah, he played in a pro-style offense. The guy just doesn't have accuracy. Period. Whether he played in a pro-style offense or not, that only means so much. Accuracy is not whether you have it or you don't. It's hard to develop, and he's shown in the past 4 years he doesn't really have good accuracy. And I think, obviously, Carson Wentz for me is number 1 overall, and with Jared Goff at 2, and then Paxton Lynch at 3. But then I think 4 or 5 with Connor Cook, who's had leadership issues in college, wasn't voted as a team captain. When your quarterback's not voted as a team captain as a senior, there are issues there. And so whether he's going to be like Johnny Manziel or RG3 in the locker room kind of being a polarizing figure, you don't want that. Especially you don't want a guy that's arrogant. So RG3 is just ultra competitive. This arrogant. What's that going to lead to later in the later years? Will he be able to take the hit to his persona where you aren't the starting quarterback immediately? Can you sit 2 years behind a quarterback? Can you sit and develop behind Drew Brees in New Orleans? Can you sit and develop behind Alex Smith, behind Aaron Rodgers, etc.? And will he be able to do that? And I think those are some questions for general managers to analyze. And I think, especially for the combine, people always look at the numbers. What was your 40-yard dash time? What was your broad jump? What was your shuttle time? I think the interviews are the most important part. And I think no one's draft stock was really hurt as much as Robert Nikomdiche. And because he was asked whether last year he was arrested for pot possession, jumped out a 2-story window trying to get away from him. And people asked about him, and he said, I was here with my teammates. That was their drugs, not mine. Do you want a guy that's going to be throwing your teammates under the bus with the media? Do you want a guy, you didn't make this tackle. I was expecting the linebackers to pick him up. Do you want that in the locker room? And I think a lot of teams are saying no. No, I don't want that. And then also for him, obviously extremely talented, but the off-the-field issues don't worry me as much as his on-field. His motor wasn't there. You see guys like Sheldon Rankins, whose motor were there. Guys like Antonio Morrison, a later-round guy, their motor's there. They're putting 100% into every play. And Nikomdiche, he just wasn't there at times. He wasn't putting the effort in. And look, off the field, that's one thing. But when the guy doesn't love football, you see him retiring after 3 years. You see him getting fat in the off-season, not working hard in the off-season, not watching tape, not studying reads, studying, this tackle does this when it's a pass play, this tackle does this. He kicks out too much, I can use it inside swim move. And, I mean, how's that going to translate to the NFL? And that's my question for him.
It is something that you have to, kind of gauge is with these players is who can be a good NFL mind, not just a good NFL player. And that's something that, it's hard to predict, and that's why the interviews can sometimes be important. But, I mean, the Redskins, that was the problem they had with RG3. Same thing with the Cleveland Browns with Johnny Manziel. Every year you think it's going to get better, but it doesn't. It's something,
in Manziel's case, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse.
It's something you kind of have to gauge before you draft a player, because especially in the first round, like what we're talking about, it's really important that you're making a big commitment to this player.
Yeah.
This is your guy. You have to see if this guy's going to represent your team. This guy's going to be a warrior for your team and represent what you want in your football team. And with some of these guys with off-field issues, it's hard to make that commitment when you don't know what they're going to be, if they're a polarizing figure or if they're going to be that team leader that you're really looking for.
And then also touching on that, for defensive tackles, defensive ends, Redskins fans, if we weren't to select a guy like Nikomdiche out of Mississippi or Chris Jones out of Mississippi State, they're saying these guys have the talent. Well, when you have 7 defensive ends and defensive tackles getting first-round grades and 7 guys on the board, you're going to take the guy that might not end up being perennial Pro Bowler, but it's going to be a good starter for you. Get 2 or 3 Pro Bowls. It is not definite, obviously, because nothing's definite in the NFL, but gives you that he's always going to be trying hard. He's always going to be making attempts to place. He's always going to be good in the locker room. Whereas you want to risk that 50-50 chance in the first round when you could risk that 50-50 chance with a guy in the 5th round, like Antonio Morrison out of Florida.
You want to make sure that you get something out of the first round. You don't want to get nothing because you picked a guy who
exactly.
You can say, this guy has great upside to an extent. You don't want to look back in 5 years and say, who's that?
I mean, that's especially if you look at the Browns' first-round picks. They've had 2 first-round picks in the past 5 years in different. Yeah, exactly. In 2012 they took Trent Richardson and Brandon Whedon in the first round. Bust. 2014, Justin Gilbert, Johnny Manziel. Bust. Gilbert's been decent. He hasn't been great.
He's had some off-the-field issues, though.
Well. Exactly. That's
problems in the locker room.
I mean, 2007,
Joe Thomas, Pro
great
Bowler.
pick.
Brady Quinn, not so much.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And you can't be... And then last year, Danny Shelton and Cameron Irving. Irving is fine. Shelton really didn't translate to the NFL. I mean, it's too early to tell after 1 year, but he wasn't like Leonard Williams was last year. All right, so that's about all we have for Savold Fantasy Talk. I hope you guys enjoyed tuning in. Next podcast will be coming up shortly, and we will see what happens when we cross that bridge. So from Savold Fantasy Talk, it's John Schooner alongside Chris Savold. See ya!